Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show in which I celebrate artists and their body of worth. And there are artists on both sides of the footlights. Before we delve into today's show, I want to remind everyone that today marks 315 days since our theaters shut down. So let's all take a collective pause and let's pray and hope together that everyone will be back on the board sooner rather than later, and that all the great artists all over the world will be able to be in front of an audience yet again. I'm very excited about today's show because I'm going to be sitting down and chatting and talking with Merri Sugarman, who is a casting director with the Tara Rubin Casting Office. And this comes to us through the Broadway Mentors program. They're doing all kinds of great work. Some of the interviews that we've done in the past, you've seen. But here we are with Merri Sugarman. And before we begin, Merri, a little birdie told me.
Already I'm nervous.
Now, you have a birthday coming up, don't you?
Yeah. How do you know that?
Well, I get around. When is your birthday?
It's the 10th of February.
And mine is the 11th.
That's why you know.
That's why you know. And you know who else who has a birthday on the
You're a fellow Aquarian.
Yes. So we're going to get along great.
Wait, who else?
Joy Lober shares a birthday with you.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes. The two of you share a birthday together.
Okay, I'm embarrassed that you're the person that's let me know that information. And Joy, if you're watching, we need to celebrate together.
That's right. You have to come to Richard Skipper Celebrates to find these things out.
I guess so. Yeah. Who knew?
Now, before we begin, we are still now careening towards year 2 of this pandemic. And I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of all of this?
Really. Up and down, for sure. Up and down. Thank God for Tara, because we still have some work. So, I'm sort of doing that from the desk and casting some readings and just doing some maintenance on our longer running shows that have tours that we're getting ready for. And I'm doing a lot of teaching, and, on the upside, that's been great because I've gotten to meet so many people that I never would have met before in class because I have the time, to do it now. Of course, the bad part is that all of my nearest and dearest, friends and colleagues, almost everyone I'm surrounded by is out of work. And there doesn't really seem to be anything truly concrete as far as how we're going to go back and when that's going to be. But I'm certainly grateful that I have the work and that I'm living this out in relative comfort. And, I think today you're asking me on a good day because yesterday, was so full of hope. And
it's funny, a friend of mine just posted and he may be watching, he just posted on Facebook that he feels like he's coming out of a hangover because he said, I don't drink, but I haven't slept for 4 years. And I feel the same way.
Same, like waking up from a bad dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, all the theaters shut down on March 12th. What did your calendar look like prior to that happening?
Well, I can tell you what it looked like on March 12th. We were supposed to open 6.
Yes.
That was our opening night. So at about 4:30 that morning, Tom Hulse, who's the producer of Ain't Too Proud, called and said, we need to cancel the auditions. We were in our final callbacks for the Ain't Too Proud, the first national tour, and lots of people were flying in from all over the country. And then I got a call from Tara not soon after that, basically saying like, all hands on deck, we got to get to the office. But we still didn't really know like what it all was going to look like. So, I got dressed, I put my hair in curlers, I threw my brand spanking new fancy, dress in a garment bag, and I showed up to work, and everybody kind of looked at me like, what are you doing? I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? Where's everybody's clothes? What's going on? And they're like, yeah, we're not opening on Broadway tonight. And I was like, what the hell? We're not. I have a new dress.
But when and how did the cast find out? A couple of weeks ago, last week, I interviewed Brittany Mack.
I know, I saw that.
Well, thank you. She was making her Broadway debut that night.
She was,
and she said she was in her dressing room. She gets the word. I mean, all of us in this business, we dream of that day when we're going to open Broadway, and all of the anticipation and the hope and the fear that goes with all of that. And then something like this happens that none of us have preparation for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how exactly everybody found out. I know that we'd gone to pick up our tickets like the day before, and there we see all of those long tables with beautiful purple velvet bags of swag, and everybody getting ready for this big party. And I think other than Brittany, there might have been one other person in that company who was also making her Broadway debut. And, luckily for them, I don't think there's any question that that's going to come back, especially since that's a show where, although it's a musical, which tend to have a lot more people populating the backstage area, it's a smaller musical. So that could very well be one to come back, first. I think people are going to find it much more manageable to open shows that have fewer people in the company, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I know that it will happen. I'm kind of exhausted from thinking about actually when. So I'm just kind of trying not to look.
That's the best way.
Too far into the future. It's very overwhelming, So, just what's right at the end of my nose for today.
Well, I want to ask you, so many people, I mean, myself included, when everything shut down, I live in Rockland County. I'm 25 minutes north of Manhattan. I have not been in Manhattan since last March.
Wow.
Yes. And I was at a show at the Laurie Beachman Theater, which they just did a big fundraiser. They're going to survive this. Thank God. But everything just stopped, and everybody had this collective pause together. What did this do for you psychologically, and how soon was it that you were able to roll up your sleeves and get back to work?
I mean, for me, there have been a couple of different phases of that. The day we left the office, we literally have a picture of ourselves all going like, okay, bye, see you in a week. And then we realized, all right, maybe a month tops.
I remember, excuse me for interrupting, but when it was announced that Six was not going to be opening that night, the next day, press releases went out with another announced date for opening. Yes. So everyone thought it was going to be coming up a month later.
Yeah, that actually happened more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if necessarily for that show, but I mean, we just kept getting dates of like, we'll go back into auditions. There was a whole thing with Actors Equity, and that, that's a whole other situation about what they'll allow and what they won't allow as far as auditions. We pretty immediately got involved with the Black Lives Matters movement. And, I had things to, I don't want to say keep me occupied, because it's things that I wanted to insert myself into. So we've all stayed busy with that, and there was volunteer work for the holidays, and but obviously that all didn't come until much later. So I was able to roll up my sleeves pretty quickly and start to work, because necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, I needed to keep the roof over my head, and I also wanted to help care for people in my family and friends who obviously needed assistance in some ways. So I was okay for a while. I lost my dad to COVID in August.
So sorry. I'm sorry.
Thanks. So that was a big setback. And it took me a minute to regroup and kind of join the land of the living again. And, over all of it was this sort of miasmic layer of what was happening in Washington. And, the more structured that I could stay and the healthier I could be, as far as my own self-care, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that.
You're bringing me to my next question. What kind of structure were you able to implement in your life, right on the heels of everything shutting down?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't that much different from what I would normally do to start the day. Mm-hmm. Get up, wash the dishes from the night before, make the bed, do the, get ready for whatever thing I was going to do via Zoom, hoping, that there was one.
Now, let me ask you this.
Meditation, walking, I realized very quickly that staying connected, to my people was the best thing I could do for myself, even though the last thing I wanted to do was get on the phone,
Now, Zoom did not come as a result of COVID. Zoom was already on the horizon when COVID hit. And yes. Thank God that this was there. But were you implementing Zoom in your life prior?
Not at all. Not at all. I was like, what are we doing now? The idea that they were asking me to learn something new and so quickly was very annoying. But, again, got to do what you got to do.
Well, what aspects of your life at this point have you embraced, and which aspects have you resisted the most because of what's been forced upon us?
Well, that's a really good question. The biggest thing for me is that I had to sort of give up control in a lot of areas. And that's not something that is a new fight for me. But it was really like, now I had to. Now I really had to. So that meant professionally and personally. And in a way, that's for me the best thing that's come out of this. But I really struggle with it. I really struggle with it.
Well, I do want to acknowledge your father once again. I mean, going through this, what was your father's name?
Mark.
So, Mark, this is for you. So, but going through this period, I mean, was your father in New York?
No. No. He was in Florida, and he came home. He wasn't feeling well. Both he and my stepmother went and got tested. He had it. She did not, by some miracle, thank God. And we really thought he was going to pull through. He was had very few symptoms. And we had a scare where we sent him to the hospital. They sent him home, and then he went back into the hospital and never came out. It was very quick decline, and surprisingly so. So very, very healthy and sturdy New England stock kind of guy.
Well, let's go back to your parents. I want to go back, and I want the trajectory that led you to where you are now. You've seen some of my other interviews, so I always like to go back to the 5-year-old self. And that is that time in your life before school begins, before peer pressure, before all of the layers begin to become put on us. So what was the 5-year-old Merri Sugarman like, or is this a married name? Is this your...
No. This is my name.
Okay.
Yeah. Acting, singing, dancing, like right out of the womb. Not even a question.
Were your parents in the business?
No, not at all.
Now, where were you from originally?
I mean, I'm from Queens, originally, but I grew up in New Jersey. We moved there when I was 10, and that's where my whole family still is.
So how did that begin for you? Anyone else in your family in this business?
No, no, it's so bizarre.
You just had that bug.
But everybody is definitely, connected to the arts in some way, even if it's just about a love for it. Film, television, music. I played instruments when I was a kid. I did all of the All-State and All-Shore and All-American choruses, and I did a lot of community theater, and it was just what I wanted to do. There wasn't even, my parents were super supportive and really made it happen for me, running hither and yon as parents do.
Did they take you to the theater often? I mean, you were close enough to Broadway. What was the first Broadway show that you remember seeing, and what was the impact that had on you?
It was Fiddler on the Roof. It was for my 10th birthday. And, for me, it was like, what? What do you mean? People get paid to do that? Yeah.
If they're lucky.
Yeah, barely is the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the show that got me listening to cast albums. And it was actually a while before I saw another Broadway show, but from then on, it was like, we need to go to the McCarter. We need to go to George Street. We need to, if there was a regional theater anywhere nearby. And then, I went to a drama camp, and I have a BFA in musical theater from Emerson College. And then...
But what was the deciding moment for you in which you said, this is my life, this is where I belong?
I don't know, because I don't remember it ever wanting to do anything else. Mm-hmm. I can remember the deciding moment when I didn't want to act anymore.
Well, I'd like to hear about that, because you did start out as an actress, and you have some incredible credits on your resume. So how does one, when you've got such a passion to do this, veer away from that? I know, obviously, you want to stay in the business.
Yeah, although I wasn't sure about that even. I wasn't, thank God for Tara, because she put me in everything I ever did as an actor. And where I actually earned some money, I should say, not everything.
Okay.
But, my first big production contracts, and for me, a big part of it was the audition process, which of course is ironic. But I also think that that's part of what, helps me sort of walk in other people's shoes, and, why I can.
Are you saying that you did not like to audition?
Hated it, was no good at it. But what it really made me see was that I kind of thought I'm a good actor and a good singer, but other people do it better. And I knew myself well enough to know that I didn't want to compete at a level that was subpar. It just felt wrong in some way. And also because I was lucky enough to work, that when you're not happy, when you are working, that's like a red flag, right? And it's a very long story about sort of my journey to this moment, but really what happened was I wound up, after Aspects of Love, I wound up going out to LA, because, as an actor, you're always sort of like, should I go to LA? Should I go to Chicago? Should I just stay in New York? And I had gotten an agent out there while I was on the tour, and I was hostessing at a restaurant and auditioning, and I was doing pretty well in voiceovers. Mm-hmm. And really, really what happened was that a friend of mine from college who was producing a sitcom at the time said to me, hey, I know you're feeling a little lost, and they're looking for an assistant at the company that cast my show. And I think you'd be really good at this. And I can get you an interview if you want. And I was like, huh, okay. And so that's really what happened. And I promptly became the oldest living assistant on the planet. I was fetching coffee and cutting sides for people who were quite a bit younger than me. And that was humbling, but I loved it, like right from the start. Like I knew I had like landed in the right place. And
from you loved so much about it. What resonated with you right from the get-go?
It's weird. It was like I realized that while I didn't have access at the time, I didn't, for what I think an actor needs, I did know how to recognize it in other people, and I did know how to communicate with other people in order to help them access it. So, but I didn't, at the time, I didn't think about teaching or coaching because I didn't even know that that was like a thing. It just wasn't on my radar. And from that first job, I sort of moved up and I became an executive casting director at Dreamworks and then at ABC Television. And I quickly realized that, that was not going to be for me. The jobs at the executive levels ask very different things of casting directors than just getting the talent in the room. And, it's a very corporate environment, and rightfully so, but it just sort of wasn't for me. And so I started teaching and coaching, and I left ABC, and I realized when that kind of took off that I could do it in New York, which is my home. And, even though I sort of came into my own professionally in LA, I never really felt like my skin fit right there. And I came back to New York and I started coaching and teaching like in my living room. And I was working at a friend's wedding photography studio. Like I was really burnt out. I never thought I would go back into casting. And then I met this kid who was interested in casting, and I called Tara to see if I could help him out and maybe see if she had any internships and she was like, I'm kind of up to my ears in interns, but do you want to go to work? Like we had kept up with each other. So she knew I was casting, and I was like,
I want to go back for a moment. When you got that call saying, would you like to come in and work as an intern? This is one of those what if moments.
Well, no, she didn't ask me to be an intern. I had met somebody who I was trying to help get an internship. And she said she didn't need any interns.
I'm going back to Los Angeles when you first.
Oh, an assistant position.
Yeah, as an assistant.
Yes.
This is one of those what if moments. What if you had never gotten that call? Do you think that you would have continued as an actress? Or do you think that you were already seeing the signs of, for lack of a better term, burnout? In which you were going to leave the business?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it would have depended on how broad my career was becoming.
Mm-hmm.
I might have felt completely differently if I'd gotten a series regular role on a TV show, or if I'd booked a part on Broadway, or I don't know. I just knew that I was very far away from leaving the grind of auditioning and having that kind of rejection on a daily basis, which was super personal.
Now, going back to, you mentioned that you hated to audition. Brittany Mack is one of the exceptions. She absolutely loves to audition. And I love her story of not realizing what she was auditioning for when she came to audition for stuff.
I've only actually heard that story recently. But yes.
But it's such a great story. Go back, for those who don't know, go back and listen to the interview. It's great. But there are many in this business. I would say the percentages are higher for the ones who don't like to audition than those who do, because there's so much really weighing on your shoulders when you walk into the audition room. From a casting director's point of view, when people walk into the room, you can tell that some people have that talent that you're looking for, even if they are really bad at auditioning.
Not when they walk into the room, but once they open their mouths and do their work, no question. Yes, you can tell.
And what do you think is the biggest misconception about the life and the career of a casting director?
That we're not really looking. That makes me insane.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I hear it. I hear it in the hallways of Pearl Studios. I'm not going to do that. They're not really looking. Also, I think there's a misconception about what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think people sort of really overcomplicate that. I can't speak for other casting directors, but for me, when it goes awry is when the actor leaves the room and I don't really know anything more about them then than I did when they walked in.
Now, how much flexibility do you have as a casting director beyond the specifics of what they're looking for? And I will use The Graduate as an example. They were looking for either Robert Redford or a Robert Redford type.
Yeah.
So Dustin Hoffman walked into the door. And then they realized, wait a minute, maybe we've been looking at this the wrong way. How flexible are you able to be in terms of the work that you're doing?
At the beginning of my career, not much.
Okay.
But once you sort of earn your way with your team, then you have a lot more pull and you have a much bigger voice. But by the same token, even from the get-go, whether I'm working with a team for the 12th time or the first time, I do know that partially the reason I'm hired is to think outside the box a little bit. It's definitely a service position.
Mm-hmm.
I am told very clearly what they are looking for. So I try to give them that, or at least what my eyes see as that. And then I also usually ask permission. I say like, okay, I'm giving you what you want, but like we've got an hour at the end of the day. I had some ideas. Can I show you?
Mm-hmm.
So I really try and think outside the box because honestly, in the end, I'm not going to get hired again if I keep showing the same faces over and over again.
Now, I want to go back. You've also taught prior to this, and I also want to acknowledge the work that you're doing with the Broadway Mentors program. But let's go back. Who are some of the mentors along the way in your own career, both as an actress and as a casting director? I'm going to assume Tara is really up there with this.
Yeah.
But who are the mentors along the way that have shaped you with not only your career, but in your life? And what makes, in your opinion, a great mentor?
I mean, I think that there are people who are mentors but don't know that they've been mentors. And then I think that there are people who consciously, say, I want to mentor somebody. For me, it's kind of been a little of both, in opposite positions. I can tell you that I had an English teacher in the 7th grade who made me a reader and a book lover. And she's the person who opened up reading plays to me also. I didn't even know that was a thing, So she's the person who got me really interested in language and in actual storytelling. People in both of my parents have been mentors in a way, right, wrong, the good, bad, and the ugly, no doubt. Tara, for sure. I had an acting teacher in college at Emerson who was sort of the person who showed me the difference between a presentational way of telling the story versus a very natural way of telling the story, and yet still kind of being able to reach the back of the house. And that was new. And he also kind of nurtured my career no matter what I was doing and stuck with me long after school was over. And then, there were quite a few people in LA, casting directors, who sort of were very patient with me and saw stuff in me even when I wasn't bringing it to the table, which is really the job of a mentor.
And do you miss LA at all? Did you enjoy living
No.
there? So you're a true New Yorker.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you get a lot of bang for your buck out there. The weather's beautiful. And, and also, by the way, like, I don't mean to be disdainful of it. Beautiful work is being done there, like there is everywhere in certain places if you know where to find it. But it just wasn't for me. I need to like step outside and be like, look at all these people, like right here at my doorstep.
Absolutely. Now there are, I'm all about celebrating. So I
love that.
Thank you. And I'm not about the negatives, but there are negatives in our business, in our lives. We've lived through it for a lot of that lately. But has anyone ever given you advice in the position of being a mentor that was the wrong advice for you? And how did you move beyond that?
Yeah, for sure. I think you only get to move beyond that when you know that whatever you're gaining from a mentor is probably information that you don't already have. So, to take it in and follow that person's advice, of course, is your gut. But as you get older, you realize that nothing's written in stone. Mm-hmm. So you get to make decisions and then change your mind, which kind of, I used to become a little bit paralyzed about making decisions, because then I thought, like, what if it doesn't work? Then I failed, or then I can't go back, or then I'm missing that opportunity. Or so what you do with bad advice is say that doesn't really exist. There's no such thing as bad advice because I learned something from this, and then you move on and you don't make that mistake again. But I still say, even though there's a risk of getting advice that wasn't necessarily right for you, I won't call it bad advice. Nobody asked me to break the law or anything. The best thing that you can take away from that is I jumped. I jumped in. I didn't just stare out over the edge because I wasn't sure.
Now I'm going to ask what will probably seem like a silly or stupid question. It may not be. I don't know.
I'll tell you if I think it is.
Okay. Is there a path for someone who aspires to be a casting director, or is it based on relationships, the people that you meet along the way? What if somebody says, I want to be a casting director, that's where I want to be? What are the steps that one takes to get there?
I think it depends on where you want to live and where you see yourself and what you see yourself actually casting. Is it film? Is it television? Is it theater? Is it all of it and you just want to start your journey anywhere and just do it? There are so many different ways, so many more ways to do it now than there were back then. Then it was just like everybody I knew fell into it, and you either did an unpaid internship or you prayed to get in your foot in the door any way you possibly could, and then, get to the casting people and ask if they needed help in any capacity, right? So maybe if it's LA, you become a production assistant on something and you're the person who has to run the scripts to the casting offices. I'm so dating myself right now because nobody does that anymore because everything's, digital,
I want to ask
obviously.
You, along those lines, since you first started out as a casting director, what are some of the major changes that you've seen in the business and that you really love? And what are things, again, that you are, I'm not too crazy about this?
Yeah. Just to finish up the other thing, I do think that there is a path now. Mm-hmm. There are theater admin classes, and I think that there are ways when you try to get a job as a casting director through whatever relationships you formed. There are certain things that you can put on your resume that I'm going to go oh, she studied, theater admin at Columbia. You know what I mean? That's interesting. She blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's that. The speed is the thing that is most different now.
Mhm.
And I think that it affects all of us, especially actors. It would never happen even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago,
Mhm.
where a team would say, could you set up an audition for tomorrow afternoon? And then you send an actor, 20 pages of material to learn. And yes, it's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Or like soap opera people are used to that because they have so many script changes. But the speed, and I'm not sure that that's helped us, because it makes people less focused and less available for the business at hand, because now people need to make money. I mean, that's always been the case, but everybody's kind of like throwing stuff up against a wall and seeing what sticks. So whereas before I would be working on one Broadway musical, now I'm working on 6.
Now,
not the musical, but 6.
No, it's excited for you, Vin. As a teacher and a mentor, and you're sitting in the casting office and someone comes in to audition for you, are those two hats in the background? The teacher hat, you're thinking, I would love to work with this person. I think I can get them on the path that they need to go. Or do you keep those two completely separate?
They can't be separate. They can't be separate. I mean, without trying to have like a modicum of modesty here, most actors don't get to, a later part of the casting process without working with a casting director first, without getting adjustments, without having work sessions, without talking about what they're creating and what my team is looking for. Sometimes actually translating, the director or the production supervisor, somebody gives a note and you can see that the actor is just sort of blank. And then I run out the door after they leave and say, for the callback, just be louder. It's usually not quite that elementary, but you know what I mean.
Well, I want to ask you how you got involved with the Broadway Mentors program.
Yes. How did I? It's been so long. Coincidentally, the Broadway Mentors program is situated in their classrooms and offices are in Somerville, New Jersey, and that is where my brother lives. So I knew the area really well. And it's a small town, right? So, but Joy had actually reached out to me. Joy was an actress herself, and she'd been in Evita and a bunch of other things. And we'd always sort of heard each other's names around. And I knew that she was doing this. And I think I actually might have heard from somebody else and called Joy myself or reached out to her saying, hey, I hear that you are you are heading up this program. And I know that you brought so-and-so in, I'm a teacher and a coach as well. And this is something that I'd like to be involved in. She vetted me a little bit, if I recall.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. And, I've been working with her pretty consistently since then.
And what do you bring to the table as a teacher, as a mentor with this program?
I mean, I think the biggest part of it is that with Broadway Mentors, it's mostly kids, right? Mostly, some adults. But, with this, like with anything else, I feel like there's a certain empath bone that is always like sticking in my craw a little bit. I also think that...
That's the Aquarian gene.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
And I also think that because I want to get my job done and do it well and get hired again, I've learned what it means to sort of, coming from an actor's perspective, to create a warm room, right, where people can relax if they can and do their best work. And I also think that I cut through the crap pretty quickly. So it doesn't hurt that I have this experience in film and television and can actually say, yeah, this is what they mean when they say that. Or do you know what I mean? Like, I'm all in for like giving up all of our secrets to the actors.
No, that's wonderful. Now, when I came to New York in 1979, a lot has changed in this business. And I pretty much, I got my equity card 100 years ago, but it's been a while since I've auditioned for anything, because I've done my own thing and I've etched out my own career path. But what advice do you give to someone coming into the business now? I can't even imagine for someone starting out in today's market.
I don't think it's that different from when we were doing it. But I do think that there is a level of fragility and entitlement in the generations that have followed, that is in a way good and in a way not so good. But this is never going to be a business where like everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's a sort of sense of fair play and carefulness that never really works if you decide that you want to go into this business. And so it means just being scrappy as fuck. Do you know what I mean? And not, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's a lot of work, and it's such a numbers game. Like, just because you're talented doesn't mean you're going to work.
Exactly.
I do believe that if you stick with it, the cream rises to the top ultimately. But you got to have long-term vision about your career, like really long-term vision. And, societally,
such as American Idol, and I'm actually going to be interviewing Michael Orland next week, who is, do you know Michael?
Michael is one of my favorite people on the planet. Now I get to brag that I know him.
Yes.
But yeah, Michael used to play all of my auditions in LA. And then he got too fancy. And you can tell him I said that.
He's going to be watching this, I know.
But when I go to LA, if he's available, he'll still play for me. Yes, what were you going to say about him?
No, that I look at shows like American Idol and So You Want to Dance and everything, where it's all about the competition, and which is an audition in itself. But that instant gratification that you're going to be signed to a contract. And my concern with all of this, and I don't know the backstory with those shows, and hopefully Michael can help me with this, but if they're prepared for what this business really entails, such as...
You can't be prepared for what the business entails. And that kind of insta fame, some people can sort of, if they're lucky, they have mentors and they have a foundation that helps them keep their wits about them. And it doesn't make them stop working and stop learning and stop studying. And do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the only way to survive that. Because most of those, very much on a smaller level, in the same way kids go to college and they showcase and they show well and they get an agent, and then they're dropped a year later because they've rested on their laurels and the agent didn't really know who they were as an actor from seeing one scene and one song. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is a lot of work to be done, and people who do the work sometimes aren't as talented as the people who don't. And that's why you look at a Broadway musical and you go, I'm better than them. And I'm like, yeah, but they worked harder than you did.
Well, let's go back where we started with all this. I mean, again, because of COVID, so much is being done this way.
Yeah.
We are putting product out there. A lot of stuff is really very, very good. And a lot of it is really, really bad. And a lot of the really, really bad stuff is there for eternity.
I know.
What are your thoughts on where we are right now in terms of everybody being pretty much proactive in terms of what they're putting out there?
Well, I mean, it's kind of presumptuous for me to say that's good and that's bad. It's just me going, that rings true to me and that is interesting to me and kind of makes me lean in and makes me feel something. And that does not. So clearly I'm being really politic here.
I love that response. Yes.
But it's the same way in casting. You know, so many times an actor walks out of the room and I'm like, all right, I'm a genius. That guy killed it. And the director says, yeah, I don't get it. Next.
Uh-huh.
And you're like, are you not seeing things through the same eyes I am? Because you're paying me money to like bring you people who are good. And I thought that was good. And he's like, it was good. I just didn't, not for me. And it's like,
well, it's all a matter of personality. It's a matter of what rings with that person.
It
doesn't necessarily mean that you're right or he's right or vice versa.
That's right. And I kind of applaud people who are using social media as a platform to get their work shown. They'll know soon enough if nobody's interested. You know, and also PS, turn it off. You don't have to watch it.
And that advice, everyone, is for everything you see on television.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. One of the things that drives me crazy about social media, you know, some people will go on and they will start a thread about what was the show that you walked out of? What was the one person that was cast in a show that you felt was wrong for that show? Who would you like to see in that role instead? And I avoid those like the plague. And message boards, you know, I think are like one of the worst things that come out of social media, where everyone has an opinion. It's great that we have opinions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our opinions need to be put out for the rest of the world. We're dealing with people.
Here's what I think. Loud and negative is usually from the people who are the least talented and the least likely to have a career, you know, that actually keeps the roof over their head. You know, I'm not interested in that. But then you could say that what's negative and what's not negative is how you see things. Also, I just don't have time for it. And also, like, it's really not productive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I also think that if you have a brain in your head, you know now that no matter what you say or do, it's there forever. Forever.
I love these commercials where people are going, oh my God, can you take that off of my resume?
Yeah. Yeah. I just actually listened to a really interesting story on NPR about a man who took Google to court because there is still something online about him that was true 15 years ago, and it is no longer true. And he has paid his debt. And he can't get work because that's the first thing that interviewers see when they Google him. And they took it down. They wound up taking it down. But, you know, the damage was already done.
He won the case. He won the case.
He did. He won the case. Yeah.
No, that's a rare, and it must have taken a lot of money and moolah to get to that point. With where we are right now, none of us know how long we're going to be where we are right now.
Yeah.
How do you see the business progressing as far as using this media of social media right now? I know that you're dealing with unions and everything for casting. A lot of people want to do readings. What are some of the logistics that people are dealing with right now?
Well, first of all, a lot of new official contracts have emerged. You know, this is called the SAG-AFTRA streaming platform reading fee. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a million of those that we sort of have to learn about. I kind of think it's a good thing because it's been a very creative time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's just me being like ornery, like not wanting to like have to learn something new. It's like, leave that to the kids. But you know, again, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So you got to do what you got to do. So there's a lot of that. But once we're back, I don't think it's going to be changed all that much. It's possible that like the pre-screens for theater at least may save time to still be, but we do that anyway with people who aren't local. And we've been doing that for years. I just don't think things are going to change that much. My world is theater now. And you got to do it in person. You just got to.
Were you doing any online casting at all before all this?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, self-tapes have been around for a decade now, and we do a lot of weeding out, just for lack of a more gentle term. But not because we're lazy or we wouldn't rather be in the room with somebody. It's just that what it has allowed us to do is cast a much wider net. But I'm not going to ask somebody to fly in from Alabama unless I know that they're at least in the wheelhouse of what I'm looking for. That would be rude, right? That's money and time. And so, yeah, but beyond that, I don't think anybody's casting a Broadway musical solely, via Zoom.
And of course, none of us know, but how do you anticipate or how do you see theater coming back? And I'm speaking mostly
slowly.
Slowly. Slowly I turn.
Yeah. Do you mean when or actually how?
No, how. None of us know when, but how do you think that by the time that theaters do reopen,
yeah,
and you mentioned 6, which is a smaller scale show, there was a time in the 50s and 60s where there were a lot of two-handers.
Yep.
I Do is a perfect example. Very
it's so
intimate.
funny that you're saying this because somebody just wrote me and said, hey, can you tell me what your favorite musicals are with less than 6 people? 6 or less people.
Oh, synchronicity. It's there.
Synchronicity. Yes.
Yep. But do you see, I think of musicals like Bells Are Ringing is a smaller, it's more than 6 people, obviously, but it's a smaller scaled show. It's not this big, massive show like Hello, Dolly.
Right. I call that a boutique musical.
A boutique. Do you think those musicals will be coming back?
Yes.
To shows?
I do, but not from the 20th century, more so from the 21st century. I think you'll see a lot of those musicals, but less promises and tintypes and, and more Bill Finn stuff. And, John and Jen and elegies and I can't think of any right now, of course, but yeah, more modern shows, next to normal.
So you're seeing a renaissance with writers and looking outside the box.
Oh yeah,
coming back. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and I also see I also see a lot more writers of color, emerging, and I think that there are a lot of things that we can call what this moment in time has been, and I'd go back in a second in some ways, but in other ways, this will be a time of renaissance, I think, and that will be a great thing.
Well, so much was happening before we got to this point with the Me Too movement and the BLM movement and everything, Black Lives Matter, and everything that's moving us in this direction. And I think looking at the next generation that's coming behind us, thank God that those are the things that they are fighting for.
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, look at our cabinet. Look at our new cabinet.
Yes.
It's amazing, right? It's amazing. And I just don't think we can't go back. We cannot. Got to keep pushing forward.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I've enjoyed this, and if you've enjoyed it as much as I have, I'm happy.
I have. I mean, I don't know how much you've enjoyed it, but yes.
I enjoyed this a lot. I do want to mention, we are here on behalf of the Broadway Mentors Program. So there's not only the Broadway Mentors Program, where they have scholarships. The Rebecca Luker Scholarship has just been established. We always shout out to Rebecca Luker. And then there's the Broadway Mentors Foundation.
Yes.
You can make donations to them. Think of that other child out there that wants to go into this business, and they have the opportunity to work with someone like Merri and Broadway actors and actresses and musicians and the whole gamut of what Joy Lober is doing.
Sound engineers. Joy's really doing something that most schools and organizations like hers are not.
But they will be, because imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But she is leading the parade.
She is.
Yes.
She is. Yep, for sure. And the beauty of Broadway Mentors also is that if she doesn't have it, she very well might get it for you. If you stay open to things, and, they're very accessible. And I love that about them.
Well, I want to thank you once again. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you did, please go to my website if you haven't done so already, and sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That really helps to boost me in other markets. I also want to let everyone know that tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, I am going to be celebrating Judy Tenuta. It could happen.
I love it.
Judaism. She's out with her. Well, that's what she calls it.
That's cute. Never heard that.
And so she's spreading joy and love everywhere. So I'm very excited about doing that tomorrow. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list. Go to the third name that pops up. Reach out to that person with a phone call, not a text message, not an email, not a private message on Facebook. Pick up the phone, call them, let them know what they mean to you. As my dear David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. You never know what anyone else is going through. And I think we've been reminded a lot of that over the past 4 years and beyond. So pay attention to what's going on around you. And Merri, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching at this time. And again, thank you for your body of worth.
Thank you.
The gifts that you give to the world and that you will continue to give. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really nice of you. I was honored that you asked. The only thing that I would say is going back to just talking about, my journey and my sort of transition from one kind of career to another. If I had known then that I had options and that I wouldn't make any decisions that I would regret, at least career-wise, because every single thing was sort of a piece of the pavement to the next thing, I probably would have been able to do this and get where I got with a lot less sadness and drama and fear. So I would say to jump at those opportunities. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it's definitely going to be, part of the fabric of where you wind up anyway, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Bye,
everyone.